Greetings friends, it's David here, and I just wanted to do a quick update video for May 2026. It's been a while since I last spoke to you, largely because I've been traveling. Obviously I was down in Texas for most of the winter period, so it's nice to be home finally. As you can probably tell from my voice, I'm a little bit sick. Nothing major, just a bit of a cold spell here. We had a bit of a snap the last few days, and I woke up this morning feeling a bit under the weather. I think it's that false start of summer that you get here, where you get glorious few weeks of lovely weather, so you kind of become accustomed to cutting about in your shorts and t-shirt, and then you get a few days of cold and rain, and then you don't really adjust for that, and then the next thing you know, you're feeling a bit rough. So yeah, like I say, my voice is a bit shot. I feel fine. But if I sound a bit off, I do apologize. So, yeah, there's a couple of things I just wanted to talk about. I will start off by talking about the figures that I'm going to show you. This is the stuff I completed in the last while. And then I think I want to talk a little bit about my favorite channels. And then I want to talk a little bit about why I like those channels and why I do not like other channels, which has become a bit of a rolling topic for my channel. I know that my friend Ralph in England has been doing the same. He talks a lot about channels that do not appeal to him, and then the channels that do appeal to him, and the sense that we're getting of the changes that are happening in the world of YouTube. And then I want to talk a little bit about some plans for the future and what I see the future of this channel being or not being, as the case may be. If we look at the figures first, we'll start with these Franco-Prussian War French Cuirassiers. These are 10mm figures by Pendraken. Absolutely lovely, really easy to paint. They got loads of detail. The benefit being, of course, that they're small, so what I was able to do here was, pretty handily get through them at a rapid clip. So the method I used for painting them was a black undercoat that preserves the shadows, and then I borrowed something that I had discussed with Kevin Krause from the Krause collection, 15mm Genius, where he suggested I use contrast paints for the skin tones, which I've done here. So all I've done there was basically paint the faces and the hands, because that's all the flesh you really see, with a very stark white, and then I basically ink those with the contrast paint. And I think it gives a nice kind of realistic skin tone that isn't too bright. It's a bit kind of muddied. I think it looks good, because you don't want the faces to be shining out of with these really small scale figures. And then the rest of it, I went for an almost impressionistic style, where I've left the really dark recesses black as much as I can, and then I've just touched basically the upper areas with paint, a slightly lighter tone than I intend for the finish, because when we look at them really closely, they tend to look quite bright, but when you look at them from about 3 to 6 feet away, the color seems darker, and then they also seem to blend together a bit better. So I don't think, I've obviously filmed them here on the turntable, and they kind of, I hope you get the sense of the impressionistic style. In other words, there's basically raised areas that have touches of paint and then dark recesses, and so I hope that gives you the idea, or the sense rather, that we're dealing with a slightly different painting style from my usual 28mm fare. So I thought I did a decent job here. Like I said, the speed at which I painted these was pretty decent. I did this in Dallas, so I didn't have, it wasn't my usual painting environment, which I think has had a huge impact, or has a huge impact rather, on how you paint and how much you enjoy the painting that you do. Anyway, by the time I got back to Washington, I based these up, and I've put them on 30 by 30mm bases. That's what I'm going to use for my Franco-Prussian collection. I know that the first few units you saw from this was, I think they were using 50 by 25mm bases, but I've actually changed my mind. I'm going to go for 30 by 30mm squares. I think it just works better. It's more versatile. and it just aesthetically works better for things like the cavalry and so on. So I'm going to go with the 30 by 30 mil bases. I think that's the standard for bloody big battles. Not that I'm basing to a rule set, it's just more a coincidence than anything else. And yeah, if you look really closely at the figures, you'll see bits of grass still stuck to them, like on the bodies of the horses. That's just sloppiness. I need to get some canned air and just or airbrush or whatever, compressed air, and just blow away some of the extraneous strands of grass that have gathered in recesses on the figures and so on. They're not glued there, obviously. And then another thing I need to do is just, I noticed some of the muzzles of the horses are a bit they got a bit of a dry brushing when I did the basing, so I'll do a little bit of tidy up and then I'll varnish these figures, but I think for now we can call them done. So yeah, like I said, nice figures. I'm very happy with how they came out. And I actually enjoyed painting them. The nice thing about doing highly uniform armies is just this, you can really systematize how you're doing it, and it becomes a real labor of relaxation and love as you roll through, mountains and mountains of figures. When you paint more irregular armies, I find that sometimes that's actually a stressor, because you're trying to still retain, you have to put a lot more thought into it because you're trying to retain the sort of irregularity. So the other figures that I finished are some what these are meant for, rather, let me start with that. These are meant to be Numidian Imitation Legionaries. So in the later period of the Numidian kingdom, the Romans trained like a heavy infantry contingent for the kings of Numidia when they were a client kingdom. And then obviously later on the Roman Empire absorbs Numidia and it functionally ceases to be even a client kingdom. That's after the civil wars. So what I've done here is I've taken some Essex figures, which are Caesarian legionaries, and then I have painted them in more skin tones more appropriate, I think, to North Africa. So I've gone for a range from a sort of lightish brown kind of tanned color down to a mahogany brown. So I've got the full gamut of color here, and this is when I was mentioning earlier the stress of variability between figures. This is where that kind of comes in, right? Because you want the figures, they are relatively uniform in terms of their accoutrement. They've all got the same shield, the same helmet, the same chainmail kind of vest thing or tunic or whatever, hauberk, I guess, and then they've got the same armament largely. But what I wanted with this Numidian lot was a slight variability in how the figures look. So I varied a few things. One which didn't really work out was I tried to use different tones of white, essentially. So for some figures I used like an ivory color. For other figures I used a kind of more pure white. I don't think it really paid off. I think it was just an additional step that had no real value. So for the second set of figures that I painted, I did them in 2 phases, right? I didn't even bother doing that variability. The second thing was the skin tones. So there, like I said, I used light brown, I used mahogany brown. Sometimes I mixed them together just to create some kind of, difference. And then the other thing I did was with the helmets and any parts of the armor that are considered to be bronze, I just simply use different colors. So you'll see some guys have got a very rich, kind of almost golden brass, bronzish color. Others have got more subdued green bronze colors, and some have got more brown bronze colors. And I try to mix them together, although of course I failed there, because if you look at the back rank there's the pose of guys that are launching their piler have all got the same colored helmet. Let's just say they're a cohort who shines their stuff up really nicely. Any case, and then, but I think these came out really nicely. I've gone for 8 figures at base. These are based to the, what is the dimension? 40 by 40 mil bases, which I like for my 15 mil ancients. And the command figures are kind of, I just sort of needed some focal point for the unit, so I grabbed a couple of spare Carthaginian commanders because I figured, there's enough cultural similarity there, certainly with the elites, that it would look good. And then you can see also there are some actually Republican Roman command figures from Old Glory 15s that were spare. Now they are, compared to the Essex figures, they are actually massive. on two fronts. Number one, their anatomy is slightly larger. And the second thing is that the bases that they stand on are also much thicker. So unless I go with like a Dremel like sanding tool or whatever and like thin out that base that they stand on, that little pedestal, they're going to always tower over Essex. And then just their general anatomy, I mean, their heads are larger, their arms are larger, and so on. But I think when they are on that command stand, you don't really notice it all that much. I mean, I'm sure if you looked at them really closely, you would. But again, from a sort of 3-foot position, you don't really notice a difference, to be honest with you. I mean, unless you're really paying attention. But again, I think the thing with smaller scales is you really are going for impressions at a distance rather than, the super fine detail. And I think if you start looking at the fine detail like that, you're not really gaining anything because these figures are not painted for that, right? Any case, so you'll see like the shields, for example, the spines down the center, I've done them with a really thick black lining method. Again, just to create some definition on the shields, which can be rather bland. And then I just went for black plumes. Now, the cool thing here is these figures can basically serve as imitation legionaries in, say, a Numidian army. They can serve as imitation legionaries in a Seleucid army. They could also do service as a civil war locally raised legion. So imagine Pompey or the other republicans in North Africa are hastily racing legions to fight Caesar. You could use these figures. So they're actually kind of a Swiss Army knife unit in my mind. And I think what I'll probably end up doing is adding another 2 bases minimum to get me up to 8. I think that would round out the unit, make it nice and square. And then I'll have the 2... How many do I have there? No, 3 more bases, sorry, because it's only 5. 3 more bases of 4 figures apiece. So that I can round out the squareness of the unit and make it nice and symmetrical. So each there'll be 2 command stands and then 6 regular stands, and they will look, I think, rather sharp. So yeah, I'm really happy with how they came out. Now, one thing that obviously as I've based them, I've been dry brushing the bases, and some kind of the yellow ochreish color that I use has got smeared on the bottom of some of the shields, and I'm in 2 minds as to whether to get rid of that or not. The sort of natural tendency on my side is to say, right, I've got to get rid of that, got to tidy those shields up. The more practical side of me is like, A, that's extra work, and B, probably looks more realistic than these beautifully clean white shields. So I don't know. I'll let you decide in the comments. The second thing is the commanders. So like I said, I used the Roman command for the Republican period for one of the stands. Those are the chaps in the red cloaks. I think they look pretty good. And then with the Punic figures, I went for slightly more kind of varied colors. I went for a sort of royal purple and then a lovely sort of tomb blue from Foundry, just to give a real splash of color to what is otherwise a very white stark unit. But I think it came out looking pretty good, so I'm happy with how that's all shaken out. If you have any comments or suggestions, please do let me know. I can't promise I'm going to listen, but that's what comments are for. And then I think that's enough in terms of talking about figures. So now I want to talk about something else, which is not figure related, but I'll put some footage up to kind of make it slightly more visually interesting, since I haven't got anything else. So I wanted to start by talking about what my favorite channels are. So I have several personas on YouTube. Okay, so there's obviously my Gmail channel, like Gmail account, which I don't really use for YouTube. I've got YouTube Premium on that account. So what happens is my wife tends to use that to watch things on YouTube when she very rarely watches it. And then I have a channel that I created, or a Gmail account or whatever, that is specifically for video gaming. That's where I follow all video games things that I follow. But because it's also part of the YouTube Premium bundle, I tend to follow most of my favorite YouTubers. I also follow there. So like Ralph, for example, I can watch your videos premium with no ads. I can also download them and watch them when I'm flying, which is really awesome for me because that's often how I watch my videos. But my Zen in the Art of Miniature Painting account is not a premium account, which means I have to suffer through adverts, which I absolutely abhor. And it has highlighted something to me that is quite, I don't want to say it's sinister, because it's not really sinister. I understand that there is money on the table, and people are saying I might as well get my cut rather than just let YouTube take it. So that's fine. But I think what it's done is it's created an economy of videos, or content, let's call it, because that's what people call it these days. And so people are trying to essentially game the algorithm and say, how can I make my videos more discoverable? How can I be like the most, how can I make cash money off this? How can I get, I don't want to say how can I get rich, but you get the idea, right? No one's going to get rich from this, to be clear. If you are, you're in the wrong spot. I've said that before. But what that does is it encourages certain behaviors. So the way that you will observe that is typically with things like thumbnails and titles. So people will create titles that are quote-unquote clickbaity. They will have the same thumbnail that everyone else has, and it's usually some inane picture of a face, the person's face pointing at the corner of the video, and the title on the thumbnail won't always match the title of the actual video itself. And it's all about getting your attention in a very sort of petty way. It's kind of the equivalent, I think, of like a child that's not getting enough attention, banging on things, just making a racket for the sake of, at least if they get screamed at, that's better than nothing, right? That's kind of what it reminds me of, and it's not very fair. I understand that the people that are doing these things are doing it because YouTube is telling them, if you want more people to watch your videos, you need to do these things. And I think that's where the problem comes in, because people are ascribing value to the number of subscribers they have, and to the number of views they get, and to the number of likes or dislikes that they get. And the reality is, it doesn't really matter. If you've got millions of subscribers, and this is your day job, and the money's flowing in and so on, I get it. You are beholden to your corporate overlords. But if you are just some guy in his basement making videos about toys that you like, it's okay to kind of be lo-fi about the whole thing. I don't think you need to try to impress anyone. I don't think you need to try to make money out of it. I think if you do make a couple of quid here and there, isn't that just lovely? But frankly, that's it. Like it's just like my dad used to call hongergeld. It's just little like pocket money that you can, jingles in your pocket, and maybe you can buy a few miniatures with it or whatever. Maybe a coffee. I don't know, right? But for me, the channels that I like the most, right, are very much the opposite of that. They don't have fancy thumbnails. They don't do I really, really despise it. But it's this face thing where you look shocked on the. And I'll probably provide some kind of screenshot here to demonstrate what I despise. But it's this kind of like shocked face with the pointing finger, and everything just looks the same, and it's this drive towards this miserable generic middle ground that is just absolutely and totally devoid of any value. And I mean that in the sense of like, just observationally, if you're judging a book by its cover, right? I see it and I just see the same trash that I see elsewhere. So, and I think part of the trouble here is that there's this idea that people who make videos are quote-unquote influencers, right? And I think influencer is a very modern term for a person who doesn't actually do anything. And I think in our hobby, that's not strictly true. These are not influencers. They're not trying to... What we are looking for really is more taste makers, right? And I know it's a semantic shift, but I prefer the term taste maker rather than influencer. Because a taste maker is like a critic, right? It's like a movie critic or a book critic or whatever. And what we're expecting is somebody who's going to look at things and say, hey, I looked at this rule set and this is what I found and I didn't think it was great. Instead, what we're getting is a sort of chorus of seal clapping rather, that kind of kind of inane and pointless, kind of the young folk these days say glazing, right? It's this kind of like, it doesn't matter what you are observing or what you see or whatever, but you just are so enthusiastic about everything all the time with no real criticism. And the thing is that you're not an influencer. You're not influencing people. You're just a shill. You're just telling people, buy this thing because some company gave me a free box of miniatures and I told them that I'd say nice things about it, or if I say nice things about it, they'll send me more free stuff, right? So there's a kind of like inherent like undermining of what the whole process is. I think tastemakers like Roger Ebert, for example, the great film critic, they say unpopular things, and we should feel comfortable doing that. We should say that, let's, in the context of wargaming, I read this rule set, I read this supplement. Let's use a real example. There were a few videos released for the Into the Valley of Death supplement for the Crimean War for Black Powder. And most of them that I had seen, and again, I haven't checked in a while, but most of the ones that I'd seen were people saying things like, oh, this is so wonderful. Look how many beautiful pictures there are. I don't know anything about the Crimean War, but this is so impressive. Like, I don't care what your opinion is. You don't know anything about the Crimean War, so how am I supposed to look to you to help me decide whether to spend my cash, my hard-earned money on a supplement if you cannot critically view it and tell me if it's any good or not? You start off your entire thing by saying, I don't know anything about the Crimean War, so all I'm going to do is superficially judge this based on aesthetics. Now here's the thing. I know it's going to be a beautifully put together supplement, right? I know that Warlord are going to put lots of pretty pictures in the book. That's beyond dispute. I don't care about that. I know I'm going to get that. It's like if I go and buy a Ferrari, I know it's going to be a fast car. It doesn't mean that I'm going to like the interior finish, right? And it's the same thing here. I don't care about whether it has nice pictures, right? That's immaterial to me. What I care about is the actual content good? And then Ralph Astley made a video in which he looked at it very critically. And when I say critically, I don't mean he was just mean to them. What I'm saying is he looked at it with a critical eye, and he said, if you are looking at this as a, do I need to buy this? What will it do for me? Is this actually worth your money? And he went through it systematically, and he made a lot of comments that I thought were very good. For example, inconsistencies within the book. The figures are painted one way, but the uniform guide in the book says the opposite. And it's clearly been scraped from somewhere, and he knows what that source is, and I've got the same source here. Like the furashkas, the little field forage caps for the Russians. The pictures show them as dark green with red piping, or with your company piping rather, right? And, battalion piping. I forget which one it is, but there's a piping that goes around the rim that is different, and the band is red. And then it is dark green, like a Russian green color. The book, the pictures in the book show you the figures painted correctly, which is right. But then the actual text itself subverts that and says, no, you need to paint it the same color as the greatcoat, right? Which is nonsense. And the thing is, if a human had reviewed that text, if the person who wrote that book had actually read that and said, well, hang on a minute, the picture that's right above this text shows me the complete opposite of what's being described here. How is this possible? So there's a few points there. The first one is there's a degree to which we wonder, like, are they just churning this crap out? Is this being assistively written by AI? Because again, I think if you put it through an AI and you fed it a bunch of info and said, what is the uniform guide for a Russian infantryman? It might make that mistake because there are some sources which are incorrect. We know that mention that the Furashka is the same color as the greatcoat. Okay. So you can see how a machine would make that error, but the whole purpose of humans doing things is to correct those mistakes when it comes to AI. And so Ralph's not wrong in the sense that actually, if you are new to the Crimean conflict, and if this was the only book you owned that was going to guide you through doing the Crimea thing, he just didn't think it was very good. He was like, it's not great. It's very pretty, but the content isn't there. So it's the triumph of form over substance, right? And so and that's why I say, in my mind, I don't need a quote-unquote influencer to hype up a new product that comes out. I need somebody who is a tastemaker or who is critically viewing these things and saying, does this actually do what it sets out to do, as it states on the tin? And the reality is, with that supplement for black powder, unfortunately, the answer is no. So I would highly advise you, if you've not watched his video, go and watch it. I think he's very honest about the good and the bad of the book. It helped me decide not to buy the book, because I'll be honest, I didn't need the book for its painting guides or its history of the Crimean War, because I know that, and I've done my own research, quote unquote, on that. The thing I was looking forward to specifically was the scenario designs, because one of the challenges with wargaming is that we cannot always model battles one for one. It's just not an option, right? Like, some of these battles are so large that you would have to have these colossal collections just to play, like the Battle of the Alma River, right? And so what I was hoping would be that these rules, the supplement, would essentially try to provide a sort of scaled down, gamified version of the battle, which would work for a more modest collection. Because what is frustrating, I suppose, about wargaming is that as you paint your army, you don't get to play with it straight away. There's this sort of massive delay of gratification as you get to a point where you've actually got enough figures to be able to actually do something with them. So anything that sort of allows us to condense down the size of large battles, or that provides us with small battle options, would be a good thing. Anyway, enough about that. The point I'm trying to get at is, my favorite channels tend to be people with opinions, okay? Like, I don't need people to just tell me everything's wonderful. I want people who are going to tell me critically if they think something is good or not. I go to them for their opinions. I don't go there for objective fact. I don't care about objective fact on the internet. If I wanted objective fact, then I would just buy the book, right? What I'm looking for is, I'm looking for the subjective opinion. Again, I'm looking for a tastemaker. I'm looking for a critic. And the thing is that my favorite channels are all very, I don't want to say low effort, because that's not the right word. The word I'm going to use is lo-fi. In other words, they eschew massively complex production for content instead. That doesn't mean that they're badly made. That doesn't mean that they're poorly recorded. It just means that people like Ralph will make videos that don't have fancy thumbnails. They don't have weird intros. They don't have music banging in the background. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But it's an artistic choice for him, right? But he's not like focusing on trying to be like entertainment for entertainment's sake. Another one of my favorite channels is a gaming channel called Michael Snow. And it's just a guy who just sits in front of a camera and he just talks. And he has some gameplay footage. And he can be quite controversial in his opinions sometimes. And he knows that, right? And I think it's great that he's that way, and I don't always agree with him. That's the best part, right? I don't have to. I can watch his videos and I can be like, man, this guy has just said something really dopey that I fundamentally disagree with. But that's what the comment section's for, right? I can go and I can tell him like, hey, I liked your video because it was thought-provoking and it made me think, but I didn't agree with your opinion, and that's absolutely fine. That doesn't mean I hate you. That doesn't mean I want you to kill yourself or die or any of that crap that seems to happen on the internet these days. And that's what my favorite channels look like. They tend to be kind of, relatively, again, I say low production quality in the sense that they're not overly polished. They are good, though. They have good content within them. It's the substance is what matters, right? Not the form necessarily. But the other thing as well is, as I was thinking about this, is why do I like these channels? It's not just the fact that they're kind of lo-fi in my estimation, but it's also that they're deeply personal, right? They are the mind of somebody laid bare on the internet, the opinions of somebody laid bare, and you can see the reasoning and you can understand where somebody's coming from in that opinion and so on. And I think that's what I really like. I like the personal touch, and there's a sort of weird like parasociality that develops between the person making the video and me as the consumer of the video, the person watching, which makes it feel like it's a two-way discussion or it's a dialectic process rather than just me sitting there like observing somebody talking about a thing they like. And so I think the fact that generally at the outcome or at the end of those videos, I go away from them thinking to myself, wow, isn't that amazing? Like, my mind feels like it's been prompted to think about things differently. And for example, if I then say I watch a Mike Snow video and then like 2 days later I play a video game, that video of his that I watched is influencing how I'm engaging with the thing that I'm engaging with. And so that, I think, is where the value lies. But also with those kind of more interesting videos, to my mind, it prompts me to want to talk to the author, right? So in other words, obviously Ralph has his comments shut off, but I can email him out of band because him and I have that set up. So I can contact him and be like, hey, I watched your video and I really like this, that, and the other. Here are my thoughts. With the Mike Snow video, I can write a lengthy response, and if he responds, he responds. If he doesn't respond, he doesn't respond. But the point is, I feel like I've had my piece said, and that's the end of it. And so I think, as I went through my subscription list the other day, and I've been kind of hacking away at the dead kind of leaves, if you will, dead branches, whatever. And I've been quite purposeful in bringing down that list. Now, some of those videos, some of those channels, for me are like non-negotiables. Like I will always be subscribed to some of the channels that don't produce videos anymore, just so that I can find them very quickly and easily, right? So Ian's channel, the Diomede, I will never unsubscribe from that, because it is a monument to a friend. So I will go back and look at that. But in terms of channels that make stuff, I've been quite aggressive in terms of unsubscribing from things, because again, I don't come to YouTube specifically with wargaming or with video games, any of that stuff, for professional level productions. I don't. I come for the personal takes, the personal opinions, the personal discussions, and that's what matters to me, right? So, and I understand, and don't get upset. I know people want to get upset. You can get as upset as you like. I don't care. All right. But what I'm telling you is that what I come to YouTube for is not the same thing as what most people come to YouTube for. YouTube is not TV for me. I come because it is a hobby that I am engaged with, and I want to see people telling me about what they've done with their figures and what their opinion is on some figures or on the rule set or a game that they played or whatever, right? It's not a sort of passive enjoyment thing for me. It has to feel active. And again, don't get upset with me. Please don't fight with me. If you scream at me in the comments, go ahead. I'm just going to ignore you. I don't care. All right. I've told you what I like about YouTube. I've told you the channels I like. I've told you why I watch YouTube channels. And if you disagree and you love hyper-produced content with the stupid thumbnail thing, that's fine. You can like what you like. It's your problem, not mine. I'm just telling you that's not for me. And then this brings me to the final point of this discussion, which has been lengthy, and I do apologize if it's driving you mad, because I'm just sitting here waffling on and on. But this is a fireside chat, let's call it that. The final thing I wanted to talk about is the future of this channel. So, I've been emailing with Ralph back and forth, and him and I have been having some honest discussions about how we feel that sometimes making YouTube content, specifically with wargaming in mind, is kind of a waste of time, right? And I think that comes from a false equivalency, of the sense that, like, you put a lot of effort into something, and then 10 people watch it, right? And so I understand where that frustration comes from, but my counterpoint comes from the fact that these videos that I make are not for everybody. They are for those 10 people. That's the audience I care about. And even if they stopped watching, I would still make the videos. And the reason I was doing that is because these videos are a diary of sorts, a record of the things that I've done, my res geste. And so I can look back at my wargaming hobby and say, what was I thinking? What was I doing? What did I say here? How did my mind change? And so the process of talking about these things can be productive for the mind, as well as being about producing something that people watch. So I've said to Ralph many times, like, I enjoy his videos. I watch them. I don't watch all his videos, right? That's fine too. Sometimes he makes videos that I might not be interested in, and that's okay. I'm sure the same is true for my videos, right? We don't have to like everything all the time. That's okay. And then the thing that struck me was, so for the last while, obviously, I've not done a lot of wargaming. I've barely played any games. I actually had a really fun game on Thursday, American Civil War game, which we won, by the way. But because I've been on the road so much for work, because it's kind of fighting season over here, campaign season, if you will, I've not had the opportunity to wargame much. And so that can be frustrating. But other things occur to me all the time, like the number of times where I have a thought about something and I'm like, oh, I'd really like to make a movie about X. And then I think to myself, oh, you can't do that because if you make that video and you put it on your YouTube channel, no one's going to watch it. Or if you do make the video and you put it on your YouTube channel, the people who subscribe to you are going to unsubscribe because what they have subscribed to you for is wargaming content. And so if I make a video about the geological profile of the place where I live, no one's going to care about boulder clay, right? They just don't. But there is an audience out there for it. And I think Ralph said this the other week. He said, he makes a video about a video game and he'll get thousands of views. In fact, people will steal his content and publish it as their own. He'll make a video about wargaming and it has a much smaller, splash zone, so to speak. So it's interesting to me. The problem, I suppose, is that I'm confronted with this thing of, is the point of a channel to be tightly curated content that is about a single thing, or can a channel be multifaceted in the sense that I make a video one day about, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but like a mushroom that I find in the forest, right? I see a really cool mushroom and I'm like, man, this mushroom is awesome. It's called a chicken of the forest and it does this and it grows like this, and isn't that wild? And that might be a 2-minute video, right? And then you might get a 30-40 minute rant about wargaming channel in the next video. And some folks are going to say, that is absolutely tonally whiplash for me. I don't want to see that. And that's absolutely fine. So, where are we? This channel is established, and I don't have a lot of subscribers. I've never asked for people to subscribe. I don't ask them to like my videos. I never will. Do what you want. I don't care. I don't care about how many subscribers I have. If I have 5 subscribers or 0 subscribers or 1,000 or 1,000,000, makes no difference to me. It's not why I do what I do. The question I have, on the other hand, is, for me going forward, because I have these other things I want to make videos for, which, I have this pot of ideas, where do I put them? And the thing is, I think I've painted myself into a corner with the title of this channel, which is Zen and the Art of Miniature Painting. It's pretty clear what it's about, right? I don't think I can, having branded myself that way, I don't think I can now say, oh, the channel is now about whatever the hell I feel it's about, and just roll with it. So I'm at a crossroads here. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing, just so that everybody's aware, I'm probably going to keep this channel as just wargaming stuff, and just because it's a historical fact at this point, no change. And then what I'm probably going to end up doing is creating a second channel for everything else. That's going to be more personal, and there might be some wargaming stuff on there, or wargaming adjacent stuff. Again, I haven't decided. But the challenge there becomes, like, what's the impetus of then updating this channel? So I think what we'll do is we'll have to play it by ear, and if it just becomes a kind of silliness of having to update the channel, at some point I'll just shutter the channel and say, listen, Zen and the Art of Miniature Painting is dead. I don't care about it anymore. This is just David's channel, and if you want to know what David thinks about X, Y, and Z, whether it be miniature wargaming or, which plants in your back garden are really good for attracting pollinators, you're more than welcome to come and watch. And if you don't like that, you don't have to do that. You can. It's all a la carte, as the Americans say. You can pick what you like and reject what you don't, and that's the end of that. So, if you do have any strong opinions either way, please do let me know. Again, I feel like I have a small audience here of people whose opinions I care about. I will take that feedback on board. If you think it's worth sticking with the channel just for the wargaming stuff, that's fine. I will do my best to accommodate that. But I'm reticent to start putting other stuff on the channel just because the title of the channel is such that it would kind of be a bit sort of silly, really. And then the other piece is that, like I said, that this channel itself is not covered by YouTube Premium anymore. So it's just easier for me to live on the other channels. So I might rebrand one of those to be more front-facing and like more broad, and it kind of just be about a miscellany or varia, or various things to kind of that pique my interest, right? Like books and movies and video games and things I see in nature and places I go and all that kind of crap. Just more general kind of, like I said, a more social network in a sense channel. But luckily, it doesn't have the clickbait crap that YouTube, that Facebook and Instagram has, right? Because that's the other thing. Like, I'm tired of social media in its current form. I've deleted Facebook off my phone. I deleted it off my phone, Instagram off my phone. Now, if I want to engage with Facebook, I have to make a real concerted effort. And essentially what I do is I go there and I look at some groups that I belong to on a weekly basis. And then the other thing I do is I check in on family and stuff. But the minute my feed becomes news, basically, that's designed to upset me, I just turn it off and I walk away, because I just have no interest in that at all. The world is bleak enough, and Facebook is not a news platform in my mind. It's a platform that is designed to keep you consuming things on that platform, and I'm not interested. So I know this has been kind of a long video. Again, I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need you to think that I'm right. If you disagree, that's fine. If you think I'm full of shit, excuse the language, that's fine too. You can just unsubscribe and never watch my videos again. That's fine too. If you disagree with me and you think it's worth discussing, comments are always there. Even better, make a video, reply via a video. That's fine too. You can tag me in the comments of in the overview of that video and make a video response if you want. Do you remember when we used to do that? I remember, and this is kind of how I found Von Ketteringham a great channel again, right? Was we used to be able to do YouTube replies, and there was the sense that I make a video and then somebody makes a video in response to my video, and I think in the current economy of production values, etc., that just doesn't work anymore, right? Not unless you have a large following. So anyway, point being is, agree, disagree, I don't care. If you want to talk about it, comments are always there. I won't delete anything, promise you. If you sound like an idiot, I will just tell you sound like an idiot. So if you go and troll, go for it, don't care. This channel has like 3 subscribers, so not a big deal. And then, yeah, the people whose opinion matters to me know who they are. So they will, just to be clear, I generally listen to people I consider my friends than just random strangers off the street. Now, random strangers on the street, we can become friends. That's how life works. So do let me know what you think. Like I said, I'm sitting here. It's now May, the middle of May actually, and it's been a hard year so far. And I am just not in the mood for nonsense at the moment, really, is what it comes down to. That said, I am all ears. Please do let me know what you think, or don't think, or whatever. Don't care. Respond, don't respond. It's your choice. You are a free agent. All right. Anyway, that's all from me. Goodbye.